The year is 1683. The gates of Europe tremble. From the east, the banners of the crescent stretch across the horizon, an ocean of tents, drums, and fear. 150,000 Ottoman soldiers stand before the walls of Vienna, the last great fortress between the Muslim world and the heart of Christian Europe. Behind those walls, barely 15,000 defenders wait in silence. Their king has fled, their food is gin. And yet, the city still breathes, one heartbeat against an empire. To the Ottomans, this is destiny fulfilled. The moment to bring Europe under the shadow of the Sultan's crescent. To the defenders, it is the final stand of a civilization that refuses to kneel. For 2 months, thunder shakes the Danube Valley. Cannons roar. The soil splits with tunnels packed with gunpowder. Nights burn red with the fire of bombardment. And somewhere beyond the horizon, another army gathers, when led by a Polish king who believes that faith
by
and
my
freedom
king's
are
command,
worth more than
I present
life
this
itself.
missive to your grace.
What will decide the
May it
fate of
find you
Vienna?
in good health
Numbers,
and fortune.
cannons, or something far older, the will of men who refuse to surrender. History remembers this moment not just as a battle, but as the turning of an age. This is the Battle of Vienna. If you love epic stories that changed the world, stories where courage and conviction stood against impossible odds, join us. Subscribe and journey with us through the battles, empires, and moments that shaped our civilization. In the late 17th century, Europe stood divided, fractured by religion, politics, and ambition. The Reformation had left scars across the continent. Protestant and Catholic princes distrusted each other more than they feared the enemies beyond their borders.
Pull harder, men! Put your
And while
backs
Europe
into it!
quarreled,
Move the gun
a
forward
power
now!
in the east had risen higher than any before. The Ottoman Empire. From the deserts of Arabia to the gates of Budapest, it ruled over 3 continents. Armies marched beneath green banners inscribed with verses of the Quran. For centuries, its sultans had called themselves the defenders of Islam, heirs to Rome and Persia alike. And now, the empire's gaze turned once more toward the heart of Europe. Vienna, the city that had withstood Suleiman the Magnificent in 1529.
We must attack here
To the
before winter
Ottomans,
sets in.
Vienna was
That
not
position
just a
is heavily
fortress,
fortified,
it
my
was a
lord.
symbol.
We will lose too
Whoever
many men.
took Vienna would open
Reinforce
the road to
the southern
Germany,
watchtower.
to Italy, perhaps even to the Atlantic
I expect an
itself.
attack before dawn.
In the spring of
Holy Mary, Mother of God,
1683,
protect us.
Grand Vizier
Please,
Kara
sweet Jesus,
Mustafa
make it
Pasha
stop.
led one
Save
of
my
the largest
family.
armies Europe had ever seen. A sea of men, Janissaries, Sipahi cavalry, Tatar horsemen, and siege engineers marched north through the Balkans. They were disciplined, devout, and certain of divine favor. To them, this was jihad, a holy campaign to bring the light of Islam to the infidel lands. But beneath the banners of faith lay the quiet hum of politics. The Sultan in Constantinople expected glory. Kara Mustafa sought prestige, perhaps even a crown. His orders were clear: take Vienna intact, not destroy, a jewel for the empire. That single instruction, preserve the city's beauty, would shape the fate of nations. On the other side, the Habsburg Empire was crumbling under its own weight. Emperor Leopold I fled Vienna with his court, leaving Count Ernst
Sweet
Rudiger
Jesus,
to Hamburg in
remember
command.
me. Let
His
me not
defenders
fall
were few,
to the enemy's
barely
blade.
15,000
Sanctify
soldiers,
me, O Lord.
including citizens, volunteers, and fearing mercenaries. Against them stood an army 10 times their number. Europe, as always, hesitated. The princes of the Holy Roman Empire feared the Ottomans, but feared each other more. To send troops was to strengthen Vienna, and by extension, the power of the emperor. The Pope, Innocent XI, saw the siege as something more than politics. It was, in his eyes, the final test of Christendom. From Rome, he called for unity. A holy league, Catholic states bound not by treaties, but by faith. Few answered, but one king did. In the north, in a land scarred by its own wars, stood John III Sobieski, King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania. A soldier first, a minute second, he had fought the Ottomans before and knew both their power and their pride. When the Pope's envoy arrived in Warsaw, Sobieski did not hesitate. If Vienna falls, he said, then so does Europe. His armies were small, his nobles reluctant, but his resolve was absolute. He began gathering men from across Poland, peasants, nobles, and his legendary Winged Hussars. They would march hundreds of miles to reach a city most had never seen, to fight for people they
Tell the
didn't
flanks
know.
to push harder!
By
We must
midsummer,
take
the drums of
before
two
sundown!
civilizations echoed across the Danube.
To the
To
wall!
the east,
of
the
Vienna!
Ottoman crescent. To the west, the Battle of Europe. Between them stood Vienna,
Advance!
the narrow bridge on which the fate of the
Don't let them
hinterland
take the
balance.
trench!
The storm was coming. By July of 1683, Vienna was surrounded. From the city's bastions, the horizon had vanished,
For the
replaced
kingdom.
by an endless sea
Charge
of
now,
Ottoman
men!
tents.
Strike
Smoke
hard
from
and
thousands
fear
of
not!
campfires hung heavy over the Danube plain.
Charge
The
forward,
enemy
men!
was everywhere,
To
their drums
victory!
beating through the night like a second heartbeat. Inside the walls,
Charge
Count
forward,
Ernst
men!
Ludwig
Leave no
Mr.
survivors!
Hemberg faced the impossible. He had only a few thousand soldiers left fit to fight, and barely enough food to last a month. Every morning he walked the ramparts, staring down at the trenches that crept closer each day. The Ottomans dug like ants, zigzagging toward the walls, tunneling beneath the earth, packing gunpowder into the heart of the city's defenses. When the first mines exploded, the ground itself seemed to scream.
Break the line!
Entire
Run!
bastions
The cavalry
vanished in thunder and dust. Buildings collapsed. Families huddled in cellars. Bread turned to ash. Stahenberg, if help does not
Press
come
the
soon,
advantage,
we will
brothers!
be eaten by darkness.
Run! Save yourselves!
Outside,
The whole
Grand
camp is
Vizier
burning!
Kara Mustafa Pasha
to the
commanded with
river!
cold
Move
patience.
quickly!
He refused to storm the walls
Secure the
outright.
maps, quickly!
To him, Vienna must
We
not
must
be
keep the fire
destroyed. It
contained.
must be
To the
taken
walls!
whole and
Hold the line!
glorious, as proof of
Hold the
Ottoman
line!
supremacy.
Stand your ground,
So
men!
he starved
To
it
me!
instead.
Face
For
the
2
enemy!
months,
Do
he
not
tightened
run!
the noose, waiting for Fia and Farman to do his work. But that decision carried a price. The longer the siege lasted, the thinner his supply lines stretched.
Hold the line, men!
Food unfed
Fight
had to
until the
travel
last
hundreds
breath!
of miles from Hungary on the Balkans. Raiding parties from local militias struck the Kinboys, burning wagons, killing drivers, stealing grain. The Ottoman camp began to feel the hunger that haunted the city they besieged. Still, morale in the Ottoman camp burned high.
Hear the bells.
To them,
They
this was
sound
the
heavier
will of
today.
Vienna. The prophet's banner had been
smoke
carried to the
carries
walls
the
of
sound
Vienna itself.
strangely.
What victory could
Charge!
be more certain?
Break their line!
Yet
Trample
whispers
the
spread
banners
among the
to the commander's
Janissaries.
tent!
The siege dragged in. Men grew restless. Superstition began to take root. Perhaps, they said, the city is protected by angels. Far to the north, King John III Sobieski was already marching. He had promised the Pope that he would come. And he did. 27,000 Poles moved south through fields and forests, joined by German, Bavarian, and Austrian contingents answering the Holy League's call. The king himself rode at the head, his armor gleaming beneath the August sun, his cavalry, the famed Winged Hussars, bellowing like a storm of steel on feathers. It was a march of fate and urgency. The Polish parliament had refused full funding. Sobieski paid from his own treasury, selling estates on jewels to keep his army fed. His wife, Queen Marika Samaya, sent letters from Krakow urging him to move faster, praying that he would reach Vienna before it fell. Every mile was a race against time. Scouts reported that Vienna was burning, that the defenders were near collapse. Yet the
I thought you
terrain
were
slowed
gone.
them, the Carpathian hills,
I'm here,
the
I'm
rivers,
here.
the heat.
It's all
Men
gone.
collapsed from exhaustion. Horses died,
Dona e
but the
requiem,
king
in
pushed
nomine
in.
Patris et
We ride
Filii
for
et
the heart of
Spiritus
Christendom,
Sancti.
he told his
Amen.
men, and for the soul of Poland.
Look at their
By
standard.
early September,
They won't be needing
the
it.
coalition
A
army
costly
reached the
victory.
forests west of Vienna, the Vienna woods. From the ridges above, they could see smoke rising from the city, and beyond it, the sprawling Ottoman camp. The plain below shimmered with tents and banners, artillery lines, and thousands of soldiers. Sobieski studied the ground carefully. The Ottomans had built their defenses facing the city. Their rear toward the forest was weaker. That would be his path.
The
He
stone
met
is
with
set.
Duke Charles of Lorraine and the other
Good work,
commanders of the
brother.
Holy League.
We will finish by
They
sundown.
spoke different languages, wore different colors,
flag is
served
raised.
different masters.
Vienna is
But for one night, they agreed to move as one. Their plan was simple and daring attack from the hills at dawn, hit the Ottomans from behind, and strike with cavalry before sunset. In Vienna, Stahenberg's garrison saw signals from the hills, flashes of mirrors, faint trumpet calls.
They press closer to the
returned to the
Hungarian
dying
border
city.
every season.
Men who had prepared
And
to
their
die
control
began
of the trade
sharpening their
routes
swords
grows
again.
stronger.
The stage
3
was
coins
set.
for the whole lot,
In the
master.
plain below,
Nay, 'tis
an
worth
empire
5 at the
waited
least.
for victory.
The quality is
In the
unmatched.
woods above,
Make way,
an
make way
alliance
for the
prayed
path.
for a miracle. At sunrise, the wind shifted. The smoke from the Ottoman camp drifted west, revealing the walls of Vienna and the armies that would soon decide the fate of Europe. The storm was about to break. September 12th,
We took the castle, but look at the
1683.
losses here
The
and here.
dawn that
The
would
victory
decide
feels
an
hollow.
empire.
Indeed.
The first light
Our supply
crept
lines are
over the
stretched
ridges
thin.
of the Vienna woods. Dew shimmered in the grass, and for a moment there was silence, a deceptive calm before the greatest clash Europe had seen in centuries. Then, from the east, came the sound of drums. The Ottoman camp was stirring. For 2 months they had besieged the city, confident that victory was inevitable. The
Steady,
defenders
men.
were
A
starving,
bit more to the left.
their walls
Aye,
shattered.
master. Steady it is.
But as the sun
Watch the footing
rose,
below.
smoke rose too, from the hills above, where the coalition army had taken position during the night. At first, the Ottomans didn't understand what they saw. The scouts had failed to detect the Allied advance through the forest. Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa believed the hills
Your
were safe.
Majesties, the siege
Now,
is lifted.
as he looked
The
up from
French
his
have
command
retreated from
tent,
Calais.
he saw the forest moving, lines of
God
soldiers
save the
emerging
king.
like
The
shadows
French
out of the
king
mist.
presses his claims,
80,000
eroding
men,
the emperor's
Poles,
authority.
Austrians,
This new
Bavarians,
balance is precarious.
Saxons, and volunteers
The
from
Duke's
across
forces are
Christendom.
here, near the river.
Flags snapped in the wind. Cannons were rolled into position.
But the bridge is
And
lost.
at their head, in gilded armor, rode King John III Sobieski. The battle began before noon. The first to engage were the Imperial and German troops. They attacked along the Ottoman left, near villages like Nussdorf and Heiligenstadt. Muskets cracked. Cannons thundered. The smoke of powder covered the valley like a storm cloud. Kara Mustafa ordered his Janissaries forward. These were veterans of 100 campaigns, disciplined, fierce, the pride of the empire. They counterattacked with precision, pushing the Germans back yard by yard. For a moment, it seemed the day would follow the old pattern, Christian armies breaking against Ottoman strength, as they had so many times before. But this time, something was different. Sobieski had chosen the ground carefully. His infantry held the Ottomans in the center, keeping their attention fixed in Vienna. The real blow would come from the flanks on the heights. By mid-afternoon, the sun beat down mercilessly. The fields between the hills and the Ottoman camp were churned into mud and blood. Cannon fire shook the air. Soldiers on both sides fought hand-to-hand in orchards and ruined farmhouses. Inside Vienna, the defenders heard the noise and realized help had come. Cheers rose from the walls. Stahenberg ordered a sortie, sending small detachments to attack the Ottoman siege lines from the city itself. For the first time in 2 months, the defenders were no longer prey, but part of a
Master
greater
Dubois,
battle.
are the accounts
Kara
settled for the
Mustafa
week?
saw his
Nearly.
lines
I
bending
shall have the
under
balance
pressure.
ready by
He
Vespers.
threw in reserves, Sipahi cavalry, Tatar auxiliaries, and artillery fire that hammered the ridges. Yet his biggest mistake was already made. His compound guns faced the ring direction, toward the city, met the forest. His army was split, half digging trenches, half fighting uphill against a force they had underestimated. As the afternoon dragged
The
in,
finest wool
Sobieski
from
waited.
Bruges, madame.
He knew
You
that
won't
one
find
strike
better
too
quality
early
in the
would
square.
fail. Win too late would lose the moment. His cavalry, the heart of his army, stood restless in the slopes of the Kahlenberg, 18,000 riders gleaming in the sun. Among them were 3,000 winged hussars, the most feared cavalry in Europe. When the signal came, it was a single blast of a trumpet. And the world moved. From the ridges above Vienna, the ground thundered as thousands of hooves began to descend. The cavalry came in 4 waves, Austrians and Bavarians in the left, Germans in the center, Poles in the right. Leading the charge, in silver armor and eagle-feathered wings, was Sobieski himself. Witnesses said it sounded like a mountain collapsing. The earth shook, the air filled with the roar of horses and the scream of lances slicing through wind. Down they came, through the smoke and sunlight, straight into the heart of the Ottoman lines. The Janissaries tried to form ranks, but it was too late. The first impact shattered them. The second crushed their artillery positions. Horses trampled through the tents of the camp, scattering soldiers in panic. Wagons overturned. Gunpowder stores exploded. Within minutes,
The
the
baskets
entire
are heavy
Ottoman front
today.
dissolved into
Aye,
case.
long walk
Kara
back to the
Mustafa
village.
tried to rally his men, riding among them with his green banner held high. But even his own guards began to break. The camp, built for triumph, turned into a trap, a maze of fire, smoke, and fleeing soldiers. Sobieski's hussars smashed through one line, then another, driving deep into the Ottoman center. The wings caught the sunlight like hylos, the lances lowered in perfect unison. Behind them came
Look at
waves
the
of
quality
cavalry,
of this wool.
infantry,
It is
and
fine
cheering
indeed,
men who
but the
had
price
fought all
seems
day
high.
to reach this moment. From the walls of Vienna, The defenders saw the charge sweep across the plain like a tide of steel. They poured out of the gates, joining the attack, shouting prayers and war cries. As dusk fell, the Ottoman army collapsed. Tents burned, banners fell, and the once mighty host turned to flight. The Danube Valley
The day
echoed
yields
the
to a
sound
fine
of retreat.
sunset, my
the
lady.
empire that had threatened to devour Europe
The colours
was
are quite
running for its
splendid
life.
this eve.
When Sobieski rode into the Ottoman camp at sunset, the green banner of the Prophet lay abandoned in the dust. The king dismounted, pressed himself, and said simply, "We came, we saw, and gid kinked." The siege of Vienna was over. Europe was saved. Kara Mustafa escaped the battlefield, his dreams of glory consumed by smoke and shame. Weeks later, in Belgrade, a silken cord awaited him, the punishment for failure in the empire he had sworn to expand. In one day, the balance of the world had shifted. The Ottoman tide had reached its furthest mark, and from that point, it would begin to ebb. But for those who survived, there was no celebration, only silence. The fields around Vienna were littered with biddies from every faith and nation. The air smelled of powder and death. And yet, above the smoke, the bells of Vienna rang for the first time in 2 months. The sound carried across the river, across the plains, and deep into the night. A sound that told the world an empire had been stopped, and a civilization had endured. If you believe history is more than names and dates, if you believe it is the story of courage, conviction, and the choices that shaped our world, then
Your
journey
price
with
is too
us.
high for this common
From the
linen.
hills
It is
of
not
Vienna
common,
to the
my
deserts
lord.
of
It is Welsh
empires,
Sweelan.
from the
I can
rise
offer a
of kings
discount
to
if
the
you
fall
buy in
of
bulk.
dynasties, we bring the
We should
moments when
inspect the
humanity
tapestries
stood
before
at
the
the
Duke
edge of
arrives.
destiny.
Yes, I heard the
Subscribe
dyes are quite vibrant
and keep
this season.
walking with us through the echoes of the past, because only by remembering where we came from can we understand who we are.